Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the MLO Project. Joining me, as always, is my amazing co-host, Handsome Dan, Mr. McAllister. What's up, buddy?
What's up, dude? How are you doing?
Good. You're a little, oh, man, you took the little, little curveball well, right?
Handsome,
Little,
yeah.
and
No,
handsome Dan, and you're like, all right,
that's I've been called a lot worse on this show in life. So
hey, that's the truth. You definitely have, and deservedly so. On every single one of it.
You piece of shit.
Piece of freaking shit. You know what? It's funny when you said that was I don't know about you. I'm a big Lebowski fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you see the movie, right?
Yeah, a long time ago. But
okay. So there's this, and I've done this. You have to have the right relationship with the person to use this quote. But Walter, played by John Goodman, and every time Donnie tries to say anything, he's always like, shut the fuck up, Donnie, whatever. And then the one scene that always is like the funniest one, and he's just, Donnie says something and he goes, and John Goodman's like, life does not stop and start at your convenience, you miserable piece of shit. Just the way he says it. It's just, so when you said that, it just popped up. But hey, guys, I honestly think you guys would love a Lebowski episode because that's just such a great movie. But that's not what we're talking about here today. We because one thing that we do at Empower is we try to make things that are overcomplicated by the industry with how you're taught, because you came from the person before that, and it's just like, hey, this is how we did it, this is just how it worked, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of mentality, which it's broke, trust me, it's broke. So nothing ever gets freaking changed. And so what happens is you get these, overcomplications in, like, whether it's your workflows, whether it's your email campaigns, whether it's your outreach, whatever it happens to be. But today specifically, we want to talk about your pipelines, because we've seen a lot of them, and some of them are just insane, like way, and ultimately, one thing that I've known of building few of these in different systems and dealing with consumer direct teams, including my own, because I did the same shit, right? I was like, I came up with like 1,000,001 scenarios for like stages, but what about this? And what about that? And what about that? So I am guilty of doing that in the beginning, but then realized like none of that freaking matters. And they're all like, you could come up 1,000,000 different scenarios. So I remember building this last one and it was literally like 15 different stages. And I'm like, you don't need like way too many stages, like wait, because they would like every little little tiny thing, and they're like, well, I want this, I want that. I'm like, okay, that's great, tell me the data behind why, right? Tell me the whatever. And I tell this story all the time, that I had this one loan officer that was like, I paid all this money, all these automations or whatever, and I said, do me a favor, like, let's turn these off for 60 days and let's see what difference these make. Does it make it worse or better? Like, trust me, like whatever, right? So we turned them off, didn't make a damn bit of difference, right? Not one thing. And I said, you spent money and hours and all that stuff based off of your feelings. And that's where I really think it comes down to. It's like one thing if you build it off of data, and look, if your data shows you that 15 different stages and all these different automations is what blows people's hair back, then cool, right? But if it's just based off of your feelings,
it won't, just so you know.
I mean, it won't. Just saying it, but like, but let's not get overcomplicated. So I know, Michael, this is something obviously you see on a huge level. So let's kick us off with this conversation.
Yeah. So it's funny because going into this conversation, I immediately thought back to the one client that I've ever had that's a high producer. But he's the only client that I ever had that insisted on not having a Kanban pipeline. And so Kanban, most people listening to this aren't going to like recognize that term, but if you're familiar with like Monday or Trello, yeah, originally, Pipedrive is like the first CRM that most of us interacted with that had this, if you're using high level, it's opportunities, it's the stages within opportunities. It's basically your card view with a linear pipeline that allows you to see an opportunity move through a pipeline. Okay. And so what we're talking about here, I mean, I think that these pipelines are valuable for loans in process, but what we're specifically talking about is prospecting pipelines. pipelines. And I had one client in the last year that was the only client that I've ever had that insisted on not having a Kanban pipeline. And so as we're going into this, I personally, I prefer the visual Kanban pipeline. And so I was reflecting on like, why was it that he didn't like that pipeline? And I'm thinking about it. And it's like, well, because he had 30 freaking stages and he had so many contacts in different stages that he ended up having, he ended up using he had a different system that allowed him to like group those stages into his real stages. And it was an absolute shit show, dumpster fire. And so to me, it was just like a reinforcement of what I'm about to talk about, which is the way to have a clean Kanban pipeline and the value of having this clean pipeline in your mortgage business when it comes to prospecting. So what we see people really mess up with, to the point that you already made, is too many stages to begin with, right? At the end of the day, we're like, stages should not equal segments. They should not equal like every different possible way that somebody can move through your pipeline. Stages are categories. You know, stages are basic steps that happen within the sales process, the most fundamental steps that you can break your sales process down to. So, for example, somebody that's referral driven would be like, their first stage would be like new lead. That's usually the first stage in everybody's pipeline, right? New lead. And then after that, depending on if you're running an automated follow-up, like an automated follow-up sequence to get in touch with them, you might have a responded to automation stage is another popular one that we see. After that, typically you're trying to get a call scheduled with them, right? So an intake call, right? So whether it's an intake call, if you schedule intake calls, then it's intake call scheduled. If you go straight to just calling them and you're just trying to call them, and as soon as you get them on the phone, you have a 15-minute intake call with them, then it's intake call completed. But you break this into the most fundamental steps. Ultimately, you should end up with less than 8 stages in your prospect pipeline, all the way to the point of, if you're not working internet leads, your one pipeline should go all the way to the point of pre-approval. If you are working internet leads, then you'll probably have twice as many stages, because you end up using automation a lot more, and you break the process into like micro commitments a lot more. It's typically not required for a referral based business. And so that would be the first step. I would say I've got a lot more to say on like how to make sure that the pipeline's actually clean enough to mean anything to you and stuff like that. But I'll pause there and kick it over to you and see like how this aligns with what you've done, and if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I want everyone to write this down, what I'm about to say, and it's a quote that I live by. It's a quote that I love. I don't know who said it, but it's complexity is the enemy of execution, right? And so I want everyone to write that down, because a lot of you are doing the opposite of that, right? You're making it complex and not executing. And here's
I think that was Aristotle, by the way.
Oh, is it? No, I don't think so.
I'm just kidding.
Plato.
I made that
Plato. Plato, the dough, not the other guy. But when it comes down to it, is that, look, a lot of loan officers, and a lot of, just in general, like myself included, ADD, right? So like we have a lot of distractions. We see the squirrels or whatnot. So you need simple, and simple is sophisticated. And so what we also see is a lot of people trying to do like multiple pipelines based off a lot of different like scenarios, which again is like adding even more layers of complexity onto it. So one is, understand that complexity is the enemy of execution. And this is and this one I want you to know is that, like, if you are one of those loan officers, which I hope all of you are, where you really don't want to be in the CRM, like working on the CRM as like a CRM admin, then don't add a lot of what I call points of breakage, right? And so it's not a single point of failure, but it is a points of breakage. So when something doesn't happen and you have 15 freaking stages, and then you got like automations upon automations that rely on these stages, and then all of a sudden you realize something didn't fire, right? And chances are, did you have this like visually mapped out, which I always recommend if anyone's creating pipelines or workflows, you visually like map it out on a whiteboard or a piece of paper or whatever. That's a visual document, so it's easy for you to refer back to. But like if you're not doing that, like then you're going to spend time trying to figure out where the damn thing broke, right? And so you don't need all of those things, and I'm telling you that right now. Someone that's done high, like I'll tell you right now, my when I did consumer direct, and did a high amount of volume through consumer direct, hundreds of millions in origination, and my pipelines were, I think they were no more than 8, right? I think I still remember the stages, but I want to say it was like 7 or 8, right? It was lead, prospect, appointment scheduled, or no, sorry, lead, prospect, contact, appointment scheduled, appointment completed, and then follow up, and then like, I mean, literally, like I think it was like 7 or 8 stages max, right? I didn't need 15 freaking, stages, right? And Michael's right when you talk about, think about the overall overarching, categories you want that lead in per se, right? You don't need all the other stuff. You just don't. Like, what information are you trying to get? And I've also, and where I learned, and by the way, guys, like where I learned how I built my consumer direct business was talking and using a book called The Conversion Code, which was written by Chris Smith, who learned everything in the Quicken boiler room, right? So the whole point is, and yes, I know it's Rocket now, and I know it's a different company, but back then they were doing a high amount of volume, and so if it works for them, it's going to work for you. So you just don't need all that shit, right? So I just wanted to bring that up. Is like, one, complexity is the enemy of execution, and two, right, you don't want to have a lot of points of breakage in your systems, because then you're going to be spending a lot of time CRM admin hat, or even if you're using an agency, like the agency, then they have to spend time and like, look, like, breaking all of that down. And the whole point of that is like, why all of that's happening? Like, stuff ain't, revenue's not happening. Right. So that's something you guys need to, keep in mind.
Yeah. I think a good way to look at this is just where in your sales process can somebody, like, do people typically like fall out? Right. Mm-hmm. And so those stages, like, yep, appointment set, like that's a micro commitment. And then the next one would be appointment completed, right? Why? Because there's a gap there, right? That gap is your no-show rate. People that don't show up, people that cancel or reschedule or whatever, there's a gap right there. So anywhere there's a gap where somebody could fail to take the next step, that's what you should be looking at as a stage. So another one that's really powerful, in fact, we learned this from our studying of Quicken as well, when it was Quicken, is the application pending stage, right? So this is if, especially those of you guys that are sending out online applications after an intake call, this one's really, really important, because you need a stage that represents the people that have committed to submitting an application to you, because this is the number one point of fallout with prospects. Also why, if you have the time, it's a really good idea to just take your applications over the phone and get really freaking good at that. But if you're not going to do that, which is, again, I like, in a lot of, like, there's a lot of cases where it doesn't make sense to take the application over the phone. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but there are cases, and I get that. And then there are some LOs that are just like hard and fast against it. And I always was as a producer as well. So I get it. I don't know if I agree with it today, but I get it. And so the idea is that if you have somebody that is committed to submitting an application but has not yet completed that application, there's a pipeline stage for that. And then you have application submitted, right? So application submitted, what's the fallout there? Well, usually you have doc collection, right? You got to collect docs before you actually pre-approve somebody. So they might have completed the actual 1003, but how often do we get somebody complete that 1003 whether it's over the phone or it's online, and they don't end up uploading any of their documentations because there's a gap, there's an execution gap right there. So those execution gaps that exist, those are how you want to look at your pipeline stages. Those are what you should be tracking. That way, at a glance, when you look at your pipeline, you can see all of the people and where they're stuck in the process. And what this does for you, especially if you make sure that you keep the pipeline stages clean, which again, we'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that. But as long as you don't let too much just shit collect in your pipeline without consistently cleaning out those opportunities that are no longer real opportunities, then what it does is it allows you to visualize and see at a glance bottlenecks within your sales process. So you can see if you have a ton of people that commit to submitting an application but never actually submit that application. You can see if you have a ton of people that submit that application but don't actually give you the documents that you need to give a pre-qual. You can see if you have a lot of people that provide those documents but they don't get pre-approved. What does that mean? That means that you're getting shitty referrals or shitty leads, right? And so if you set this up correctly, you can get a lot of information at a glance from your pipeline, and you should be looking at that pipeline multiple times per day, every single day. And that's what I love about really investing in and setting this pipeline up, the way that we're talking about, and then staying on top of like pipeline hygiene, I would refer to it as.
Yeah, because guys, I can't tell you the amount of times that I'll be working with a loan officer. We get into their CRM and we look at their pipeline, and they're like, "Well, I don't even know what this like, dude. It has started, and they built it, right, and they don't even know where they put what, and so like, let me take you back to my pipeline, right? So like, I had leads and prospects. People like in our industry, people don't differentiate the two, right? But I did, because I knew that leads were everybody, right? And everyone was a lead, but not everyone was a prospect. So I knew that I needed to separate those two, because those are entirely two different conversations and two different, and two different strategies that I want to deploy on both of those stages, right? So I didn't put them all, because a lot of people just put leads, and then it's like, pre-approval and stuff. And I'm not here to, judge what you guys are doing, but I'm just saying, for me, because I knew that's where the fallout was going to be. Right. Because I knew where I needed to spend the time, and I knew how much time I had in a day, and how much time my callers had, my dialers had in the day, how long I wanted them to spend on the phone. And so I don't want them in the leads, which are going to, and when you're doing internet leads and ads, like, most of those are going to be, I don't say garbage, but most of those are going to be non-qualified leads. Right. And so, I don't try to get into like the MQLs or SQLs when it comes to like our industry, but like, I want, like, leads are all MQLs, right? And prospects are all SQLs, right? So MQLs are marketing qualified leads, SQLs are sales qualified leads. And so I only want my team focused on the sales qualified leads, right? Not the other stuff. So to Michael's point, when he's saying like, where's the follow, like, where are the bottlenecks, whatever, then, because I know that there's going to be a drop off between, phase one, or, step one and step two. Right. So in your business, the same. And what I see a lot of loan officers do is like, because they said, well, I want this just in case this happens or whatever. And I said, from a percentage wise, tell me how many times has that ever happened, right? And you have loan officers spending hours building something for a 1 or 2% possibility, as opposed to like the 50%, the 60, 70% probabilities of something happening, right? And so just because there could be, like, guys, in the life of a loan manufacturing, there's a lot of different stages, right? And that next. And now on the broker side, you have less than if you're on the retail side, because you get into docs, you get into closing, you get into funding, like, all of those are part of the retail channel, right? So it's a different beast. However, right, you don't need to live in all of those, right? You don't need to live in all of those. And so so the probability of loans falling out at those certain stages are, very low percentage, as opposed to the higher percentage things that really actually make you bring loans into your pipeline. And by that, I mean customers and revenue.
To me, stages should not be stages in your pipeline if they aren't hit with 90% of the leads that you deal with.
Yep.
Like, that's the way I look at it. Unless it's an early, like, the only exception to that would be like in your case, you talked about prospect versus lead. Like, one way that you could, like, if you set up earlier stages, it's possible that somebody could come in the third stage and skip stages 1 and 2. That's fine as long as everything else remains linear and they're skipping stages at the beginning. Then I think that that's okay. But in general, you should not, like, an edge case should not be represented by a pipeline stage. You have like every CRM has the ability to set up tags. That's what your tags are for. Okay. You don't use tags for stages and you don't use stages for tags. Your tags are for your edge cases. So what do I mean by that? Well, a lot of people will be like, well, I need a non-QM pipeline. I need a conventional pipeline. I need a refi pipeline. And it's like, no, those are your custom fields and your tags. And your stages are the same for all of these loans. Like, and you need to be able to simplify your sales process to that level if you ever want the possibility of bringing in help and outsourcing, you know, or scaling, right? God forbid, building a team, right? Like, if you ever want the opportunity to do that, you have to get to that point of being able to simplify your sales process to these 5 to 8 stages and say, okay, this is the way we do it every time. This is the Empower way. This is the way we do things every single time. And then I mean, maybe every once in a while you skip the point of, you know, you get somebody that comes in a hurry and they never do an intake call with you. They go straight to filling out an application. Like, all right, cool. Like, that'll happen every once in a while, but 80 to 90% of the time, like, they should be hitting every stage. And if that's happening, that's how you know you've set your pipeline up correctly.
Guys, we see a lot, right, with a lot of the clients and so you see a lot of different pipelines, like Michael was saying, and then, oh, well, what if they, you know, they're on a long-term nurture and then they come back in? It's the same process. Like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you overcomplicating it? And again, I get it. In your mind, you might think, well, it's very specific and it's very detailed. I get it. But like, if you do need help, I'm telling you, like, it's the worst thing, because we all think that our way is the best way. Right. So, you know, it just goes to my point earlier, is that, you know, the complexity is the enemy of execution. Is that what I found in my business is that, you know, like with my guys wanting to do this or that. And at the end of the day, and this, I know it's kind of a little side note because we're talking about the pipelines, but when Michael said like the Empower way, right? Like, that's, you know, he's not talking about our way, but he's just talking about, like, if on our team, this is the way you do it. It's the same with my team, is that it was the law, right? The gospel, like the scripting, the talk, you know, all of that stuff, because it was backed by data of what was effective, right? And then of course, if data starts showing us something different, then you switch and adjust accordingly. But you don't give your process a chance to show you that before you like start going into and building all of these freaking automations and pipelines. And especially when I could tell you, I'm like, yeah, well, that's all fine and dandy. And you're telling and it's based off your feelings that you're saying, this is what needs to be done to be whatever level you're trying to be at. And I'm like, all right, well, let me, you know, show you, you know, John over here, who's using a freaking spreadsheet. Right. He doesn't have any automation.
Doing twice as much production as you.
Twice as much production as you, but because he has that dialed in on how he's doing his tracking. Right. It may not be like totally efficient, but it's freaking effective. And then you're sitting here like making sure that it, you know, it emails the listing agent like, you know, a nice flower, you know, and sends out a gift to do all of these other different things and whatnot. And then all you're just asking to be complicated. And then what happens if you have to decide that you want to change to a different, you know, CRM type, right? Maybe you're on a high level, or maybe you're on Surefire or some other, you know, CRM, and then you want to come over the high. Either way, then you got to rebuild all of those things all over again and try to figure out how to do it in your way. And so my thing is like, guys, it doesn't need to be that way. It's just like with marketing and sales, like we overcomplicate it with the tools and everything else. This is just another thing. Just manage your loans, right? Just manage your loans, manage your leads, and find a way to like set that up so that then you could use the data to figure out what needs to be enhanced or optimized, not build the moon and then figure that out.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, one thing I'll add to that, and then I want to get to this pipeline hygiene point, is if you're somebody that wants to try new things and tweak your process and stuff, that's fine. But you should be doing it somewhat scientifically, meaning you got to control your variables, and you're not, if you're testing 100 different things at once, if every time you reevaluate your process, you reevaluate every part of it and you rebuild the whole thing entirely, and it has 52 different components and forks and ways that it can go, like, you're not controlling anything. So the best thing that you can do if you are somebody that wants to do some of these more advanced things is have your foundation that stays the same, and then you're coming in and you want to add your handwritten thank you card. Awesome. Like, no better way to be able to see the effective of that than to have all of your other variables controlled and a consistent foundation for your process. And then you're just adding that thank you card to see if that increases your app to close pull through, right? You have a specific metric at that point that you're trying to improve, and you can evaluate that instead of just like trying every new fancy freaking thing because you're an innovator or an early adopter or whatever. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about was the pipeline hygiene. Again, this to me is extremely important, which is you have two levels of pipeline hygiene. We just talked about one of them, which is making sure that your stages actually represent your sales process. The next piece is making sure that the opportunities in your pipeline actually reflect the opportunities in your pipeline. And what I mean by that is the number of people that get a fucking panic attack over marking an opportunity as abandoned or lost is absolutely insane. It's like they think they're permanently deleting the record from their database, and they'll never be able to talk to that person ever again if they take it visually out of their pipeline and give themselves a clean view of the opportunities that actually exist. And so the way that I recommend that you do this is that almost every stage in your pipeline, with a couple exceptions maybe, and we won't dive into that now because we're coming up on time here. Almost every stage in your pipeline, the opportunities within it should have a scheduled follow-up should have a scheduled task reminder or follow-up reminder associated with that opportunity. Okay. And if the opportunity is not good enough that you would schedule a time that you would stick to follow up with that lead, it's time to remove them from your pipeline. It's time to get them out of your freaking pipeline. It means like, if you're not serious enough about pursuing this opportunity as an actual opportunity in your business, and I get it, there are plenty of situations like that. There are plenty of situations where it's like, okay, well, they said that they're 3 months out, but that's really after I pushed them, and they said that it was, originally they said like 6 to 9 months out, and this is the second time they've told me that, and so I'll put something in here. But if it's one of those like follow-ups that comes across your desk, the day of, you get this follow-up reminder, and you're like, I could push this out another couple of months, or like, get it out of your freaking pipeline. Get it, just remove it. Mark it as abandoned, mark it as lost. Doesn't mean you have to stop marketing to them with your newsletters and your like ongoing in perpetuity type of marketing. But if you're not willing to like actually execute the follow-up that you have on the calendar, or to schedule that follow-up in the first place, just get it out of your pipeline, because this pipeline is meant to be a visual representation of like your actual opportunities, your actual like chances of converting into a loan, and not every like nook and like, this isn't a game where you want to get the high score. Like, having a ton of opportunities in one pipeline stage is not a positive thing. It means you have noise. It means you have the inability to glance at your pipeline and see what's going on and like take action on that. And so this is something that I talked about with our team today, right? We talked about it in the case of our business, and it's every sales team has to contend with this of like, don't fool yourself. Like, if you're not going to follow up with that person, get them out of your freaking pipeline so that you can focus on the people that you actually will. And I promise if you do that, you'll get way better at follow up. You'll convert way more opportunities.
Yeah. And guys, like, I could tell you, someone that managed a lot of contacts in Compass in our sales and prospect pipeline. It's funny. Like, as soon as you remove, like, so we created, because people were just throwing everything into their prospect pipeline, right? So we would have 1 million freaking contacts in there. And so we would, maybe not a million, but tens of thousands, and across our entire company, right? So, and at our high water mark, we had almost like 400 loan officers. So you can imagine how much data we had, right? And so when we went through and said, look, you get 12 months of prospect and then everything else gets archived. Like, again, the amount of people that like lost their mind, I'm like, it's based off activity. Like if you have one that's more than 12 months old, but it's active within like the last 12 months, it's going to stay in there. That's what we're talking about. Right. And people would it just goes right into, we saw the human nature of like worrying about what they could potentially lose as opposed to what they could potentially gain. Right. Because people were also jamming us about speed of Encompass. It's like, well, yeah, because we got too much data in there, right? Like it's Encompass is not built like a it's a workhorse, but it's not built like a fast workhorse, right? And so like we had to do it, and with backups and everything else, and stuff back that hadn't been touched in 2 years. I'm like, guys, like, what are you doing? Like, oh, well, I don't want to, do that. And this is, again, side note, but like, don't treat your LOS as your CRM. Do not put leads in your. So like the way that I did consumer direct is I had what I called my firewall. So my firewall was Velocify, right? So that was where leads and prospects went. Only to win, because prospects were qualified leads. Only to when we got into the pre-approval stage did they actually go into our CRM, which was Zoho at the time, right? And so like Velocify was my firewall to keep. So that way, everything that was in my CRM, right, was clean, intent, qualified people, right? And then the firewall kept everything else out. And then I knew that if anything was transferred from Zoho into Encompass, right, that I knew it was going to be clean and it was going to be real, right? Yeah. And so that's how. But I see people using their LOS as kind of like their de facto, just put leads in there or whatnot because it's convenient, maybe efficient. But that's like, to me, it's like your LOS is your backbone of sales, right? Sales and execution. That's how I look at my LOS. And I only want clean, real stuff in my LOS. I don't want like, potential or whatever, because then whatever. So, and that's exactly what, Michael's talking about as far as like hygiene goes, is like, guys, like it's okay if you lost the deal or abandoned or however you mark it. To his point, it doesn't mean that it's gone forever. It just means that it's not in your revenue green zone, so to speak, right? It's not in there. Until it gets there, then by all means, put it back. It's a couple clicks or whatever, but don't like just put everything in there and this because it makes you feel bad. And the only reason that these loan officers knew anything is because their prospect count went down from 3,200 right to like 500.
They don't have the high score anymore.
Where did all my deals go? They didn't go anywhere because none of those were fucking deals, right? Like, what are you talking about? So
my
like, again, like,
is when somebody like loses a deal, like they move forward with another lender and they just move it to a pipeline stage that's like opportunity for refi, and like, oh, I'll call them in 6 months. Or I'm like, Jesus Christ, just mark them as lost. Like, oh God.
Yeah. So any final thoughts on this?
No, man. No, I this is one of the, like, I think if you're listening to this and you feel like this was speaking to you, like this has the potential to be one of the most valuable episodes we've ever done. Like, I've seen this concept completely rock loan officers' world, completely turn people's experience around with their CRM from a disorganized dumpster fire to like actually being a system. And so I'll just leave it with that, is like, if this feels like it's resonating with you, like lean into it. This is, if this feels like super, super impactful, like I have seen it be insanely impactful for a lot of people. So lean into it. And as always, feel free to reach out if you have any questions on it. Yeah.
And speaking of dumpster fire, Encompass, no, I'm just kidding. No, just throw a little dig, right? We could Encompass, dumpster fire. They're interchangeable, right?
Oh shit.
Interchangeable. But guys, look, the MLO project is empowered by EmpowerLO. And one of the things that we have built this year is really what we call a growth engine, right? And that is, look, High Level is a powerful hub, but I would never call it a CRM because it does so much more than that. CRM is about organizing data, right? When it comes down to it, growth engine is about having you make money. And so with all the different things that we've built, with not just with High Level and having that be your ultimate hub of revenue growth, but also along with the broker toolkit, also along with different coaching, is you literally have a one-stop solution that is going to help you grow and do everything that you need to do to build a sustainable business, right? So this isn't a pitch for a CRM. This isn't a pitch for another app, but what we've learned through our collectively Michael's background in managing loan officers, through Empower and helping and supporting and helping them grow their business, ad spend, all of that stuff. My experience of managing, leading loan officers, coaching loan officers, consumer direct, we have basically put our best of our best together to come up with a very simplified platform and solution for all of you to not just thrive in 2026, but again, to build a sustainable business no matter what the market conditions happen to be. Right. So you're going to find the links in the show note to see what this new growth engine is. And it's not really new. It's just like, hey, we went out there and said, like, everyone else is overcomplicating the shit out of everything. Loan officers are confused. They're buying tool after tool, subscription after subscription, no ROI. And it's like, look, we have the receipts. We have all that stuff. We know it works. We put it all together in one package. So you get everything you could possibly need to win, not in this new era, but also the future of lending that we don't even know yet. All the disruption that's coming. How do you build a strong business? And that's what we have. Links are in the show notes. Come join this community. Come join what we're doing, this movement, what we're doing together, which is uncomplicating your success. So until the next episode, I am Frazier on behalf of my awesome co-host, Mr. McAllister. This is the MLO Project, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.